The Krillian armada hung in space like a plague of metallic locusts, their sleek warships blocking out the stars. Commander Vex Har stood on the bridge of his flagship, 4 eyes gleaming with satisfaction as he watched Earth burn below. Cities that had stood for thousands of years crumbled under orbital bombardment. Oceans boiled. Forests turned to ash. Another primitive species eliminated, Vex Har said to his second-in-command, mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among his kind. The humans called themselves the dominant species of their world. How amusing! The Krillians had done this before, hundreds of times across the galaxy. They were the self-appointed cleaners of the universe, removing what they considered inferior races to make room for their own expansion. Earth was just another number in their ledger of extinction. Lieutenant Zartek pulled up a holographic display showing the devastation. 92% of major population centers destroyed. Estimated human casualties, 7 billion and climbing. Good. Continue the bombardment until we reach 99% elimination. We'll leave a few survivors as we always do. Let them live with the knowledge of their failure. The Krillian doctrine was simple and cruel. Never complete genocide. Always leave witnesses to spread tales of Krillian supremacy. It was psychological warfare refined over millennia. Down on Earth's surface, Sarah Chen pressed herself against the rubble of what used to be her apartment building in Shanghai. The sky was orange with fire, and the air tasted of metal and death. She'd watched her entire family vaporized in the first wave of attacks. Now she crawled through the ruins, searching for other survivors. She found them in the subway tunnels. Hundreds at first, then thousands. People from every nation, every background, united by loss and a burning desire for survival. Among them was Colonel Marcus Rodriguez, one of the few military officers who'd survived the targeted strikes on defense installations. "We need to get to the bunkers," Rodriguez said, his uniform torn and bloodied. "The old Cold War shelters. They're deep enough to survive orbital strikes." Sarah helped organize the exodus. They moved at night when the Krillian sensors were less effective, guiding groups through the devastation. She saw things that would haunt her forever. Parents carrying dead children. People drinking from puddles contaminated with radiation. The lucky ones died quickly. In Moscow's ruins, Dr. Alexei Volkov worked frantically in an underground laboratory. The 70-year-old scientist had dedicated his life to theoretical physics, never imagining his work would be needed like this. When the attacks began, he'd grabbed every hard drive, every research note, and fled to the old Soviet bunkers. "We can reverse engineer their technology," he told the small group of scientists who'd survived. "Their weapons use a form of directed energy we've theorized but never achieved. If we can understand it." His colleague, Dr. Maya Patel from Mumbai, looked skeptical. "Even if we could understand it, we don't have the infrastructure to build weapons. They destroyed everything." "Not everything," Volkov said quietly. "The deep military installations, the ones nobody talks about, they're still intact." Above them, the Krillians continued their methodical destruction. They targeted hospitals, schools, libraries, anywhere knowledge might be preserved. They wanted humanity broken, not just in body, but in spirit. Commander Vex Har reviewed the efficiency reports with satisfaction. Earth's resistance had been pathetic. A few nuclear weapons launched in desperation, easily swatted aside by their shields. Some conventional military forces that were vaporized before they could even mobilize. The humans had believed themselves ready for alien contact. They were wrong. "Sir," Lieutenant Zartek interrupted, "we're detecting movement in several locations. Survivor groups heading underground." "Let them go," Vex Har waved a dismissive tentacle. "We need witnesses, remember? Besides, what can a few thousand traumatized survivors do against the might of the Krillian Empire?" It was the first of many mistakes. In the ruins of London, Captain James Morrison of the Royal Navy emerged from a collapsed building carrying classified documents. The underground command center had been hit, but the hardened data vaults survived. He had the locations of every secret military installation in NATO territory. He found other military survivors, Russians, Americans, Chinese, old enemies now united by a common cause. They shared information that would have been treason weeks ago. Hidden weapons caches, black sites, research facilities so classified that even most governments didn't know they existed. "There's a facility in Antarctica," Morrison told the group, "completely off the books. They were working on something called Project Prometheus." Lieutenant Colonel Li Wei from the Chinese military nodded. "We have something similar in the Himalayas, deep underground, powered by geothermal energy." They began to plan. Not for immediate resistance, that would be suicide, but for long-term survival and eventual retaliation. Sarah Chen's group reached the first bunker complex after 2 weeks of travel. Built during the Cold War and modernized in secret, it stretched for miles underground. Hydroponic gardens, water recycling systems, everything needed to sustain life for decades. But more importantly, it connected to other bunkers through deep tunnels. A network spanning continents forgotten by most, maintained by shadow organizations preparing for doomsday scenarios nobody believed would happen. She met Rodriguez at the command center, where screens showed the devastation above. "How many made it?" "More than we expected," he said. "Current estimates put survivor numbers at around 8 million worldwide. Most made it to the bunker systems. 8 million out of 8 billion. Sarah felt the weight of those numbers. 8 million angry, motivated survivors with access to humanity's most secret technologies, Rodriguez corrected. The Krillians think they've won. They're wrong. Dr. Volkov's team made the first breakthrough 3 months after the attacks. Working with salvaged Krillian technology from crashed scout ships, they decoded part of their power systems. "It's beautiful in its simplicity," he explained to the gathered council of survivors. "They harness zero-point energy, drawing power from quantum fluctuations in space itself. We've theorized this for decades but lacked the engineering capability." "Can we replicate it?" asked General Harrison, the highest-ranking military officer to survive. "Not exactly replicate, but we can adapt. Combine their principles with our own research. Create something new." The work began in earnest. In hidden facilities across the globe, humanity's brightest minds worked together. Physicists, engineers, soldiers, doctors, all united by loss and determination. They studied captured Krillian technology obsessively. Every circuit, every component, every line of code was analyzed and reverse-engineered. The aliens had been careless, assuming humanity was too primitive to understand their science. Another mistake. Sarah Chen found her calling in intelligence gathering. She led teams to the surface, using the Krillians' arrogance against them. The aliens had established small outposts to monitor the survivor populations, staffed by minimal security. They never expected organized resistance. The first raid was almost accidental. Sarah's team stumbled upon a Krillian patrol while scavenging for supplies. Instead of fleeing, they attacked with improvised weapons. The aliens, surprised by human ferocity, fell quickly. "Their personal shields don't work well against physical impacts," Sarah reported back. "Energy weapons they can handle, but a piece of rebar through the skull, they didn't plan for that." It was a small victory, but it proved something important. The Krillians could die. Word spread through the bunker networks. More raids followed. Each successful attack provided new technology, new intelligence. The survivors learned Krillian patrol patterns, communication protocols, weaknesses. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had something else: adaptability, born from millions of years of evolution as persistence predators. Where Krillians relied on overwhelming force, humans used stealth, cunning, and an ability to endure suffering that shocked their enemies. Commander Vexhar received the reports of missing patrols with annoyance rather than concern. Probable wildlife attacks, he concluded. Earth's ecosystem is dying but not dead. Some predators must have survived. He was half right. Predators had survived. Dr. Patel's team achieved the next breakthrough. Working with biologists and medical researchers, they discovered something crucial about Krillian physiology. Their immune systems, she explained excitedly. They're incredibly advanced against their own world's pathogens, but they have no defense against Earth diseases. Their shields protect against radiation and energy, but not biological agents. It was poetic in a way. The Krillians had destroyed Earth's surface, but in doing so, they'd created the perfect breeding ground for resistant bacteria and viruses. The survivors living in close quarters underground had developed immunities. The Krillians had not. Colonel Li Wei coordinated the military response. Using the tunnel networks, resistance cells formed across the globe. They shared tactics, technology, intelligence. For the first time since the attacks, there was hope. But hope alone wouldn't win wars. In the deepest facilities, work continued on what survivors called the Phoenix Project. Combining human innovation with stolen Krillian technology, they built weapons unlike anything Earth had seen before. Plasma cannons that could punch through alien shields, stealth suits that bent light around the wearer, most importantly, ships. Small at first, scouts and fighters cobbled together from salvaged parts and human engineering. Lieutenant Morrison, promoted to Admiral of Humanity's nascent fleet, oversaw the construction. "We can't match them ship for ship," he told his engineers. "So we don't try. We build wasps, not dragons. 1,000 stings instead of one bite." The Krillians remained oblivious. Their long-range sensors showed a dead world. Their ground patrols reported primitive survivors barely clinging to life. They'd done this hundreds of times before. No species had ever recovered from Krillian cleansing. Commander Vexhar even reduced the orbital fleet, sending ships to other conquests. Earth was pacified. The mop-up crews could handle any remaining resistance. His third and fatal mistake. 2 years after the initial attack, Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Bunker Alpha, watching feeds from across the globe. The Phoenix Project was ready. Humanity had built an army in the shadows. "Population report," she requested. 6 million active combatants, Rodriguez responded. Another 10 million in support roles. We've actually grown our population underground. It was true. Faced with extinction, humanity had done what it always did, adapted and survived. Birth rates in the bunkers were carefully managed but steady. Children born after the attacks knew only the underground world and burned with inherited rage at the aliens who'd stolen the sky from them. Dr. Volkov, now heading the science division, presented the final pre-war briefing. "We've identified their home world through captured navigation data. Their empire spans 40 systems, but they're overextended. Too many genocides, too many occupied worlds." "How many ships do we have?" General Harrison asked. 4,000 combat-capable vessels, mostly small attack craft, but we have 300 capital ships based on their destroyer designs, modified with human weapon systems. It wasn't much against an empire, but it was more than nothing. The Council voted unanimously. After 2 years of preparation, humanity would remind the galaxy why they were once apex predators on a death world. As the meeting concluded, Sarah looked around the room at the faces of Earth's survivors. They'd lost everything, families, homes, their entire world. But in that loss, they'd found something else: unity, purpose, and a terrible resolve. The Krillians believed they'd faced the best humanity could offer and found it wanting. They hadn't faced humanity's worst. The first phase began with careful probing attacks. Small teams hit isolated Krillian outposts, testing response times and tactics. Each raid was meticulously planned, executed with precision born from necessity. The aliens responded predictably, sending patrols to investigate. Those patrols never returned. In orbit, Krillian sensors detected energy signatures from the planet's surface. Commander Vexhar dismissed them as electromagnetic storms caused by the damaged atmosphere. The signatures matched no known weapon systems because they were unknown, human unknown. Dr. Patel's biological weapons were deployed next. Released through ventilation systems in Krillian ground bases, the modified Earth pathogens spread quickly. Aliens who'd never known disease began dying in droves. The Krillians panicked. They'd encountered hostile environments before, but never one that actively attacked their biology. Requests for reinforcements were sent to the homeworld. They would arrive too late. Admiral Morrison launched the fleet from hidden bases across Earth. Thousands of ships, ugly and functional, rose from underground hangars. They didn't match Krillian aesthetics. Human ships were built for war, not beauty. The skeleton Krillian fleet in orbit barely had time to react. Expecting perhaps a few dozen primitive vessels, they faced a swarm. Human fighters used tactics learned from insurgency: hit and run, coordinate attacks, sacrifice individual units for collective victory. The Battle of Earth's liberation lasted 18 hours. When it ended, burning Krillian ships fell like shooting stars through the atmosphere. Commander Vexhar's flagship was among the last to fall. As human borders breached his bridge, he faced the savage reality of his mistakes. The primitives wore power armor adapted from his own technology. They carried weapons that shouldn't exist on a cleansed world. Sarah Chen removed her helmet as she approached the fallen commander. She wanted him to see a human face. "You left survivors," she said simply. "Your doctrine of witnesses backfired. We witnessed, we remembered, and we adapted." Vexhar tried to speak, but human diseases were already ravaging his system. He died knowing his empire's greatest fear. They'd created their own destroyers. Earth was free, but the war was just beginning. In bunkers across the planet, humanity prepared for the next phase. They had the enemy's technology, their star maps, their weaknesses. And they had something the Krillians never expected: the cold fury of a species that had nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. The real monsters were about to introduce themselves to the galaxy. The Krillian Empire received news of Earth's liberation with disbelief. In their 10,000-year history of conquest, no species had ever reclaimed their world after a cleansing. High Command dismissed the reports as exaggeration. A few stolen ships and dead patrol crews didn't constitute a real threat. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the renamed warship Vengeance, formerly Commander Vexhar's flagship. Human engineers had modified every system, creating a hybrid of alien technology and human innovation. The ship hummed with barely contained violence. "Fleet status?" he asked his operations officer. "All ships report ready, Admiral. Operation Nightmare is go." Humanity's strategy was simple: total war. Not the limited conflicts Earth had known before, but the complete dedication of their species to a single goal. Every survivor contributed. Children learned engineering alongside mathematics. The elderly shared knowledge while manning support systems. There was no civilian population anymore, only humanity's war machine. Dr. Volkov had perfected the jump drive technology stolen from the Krillians. Human versions were crude but effective, allowing fleets to strike without warning. The first target was Kepler 442b, a Krillian agricultural world that fed their core systems. The attack began at dawn, local time. Human ships emerged from jump space in perfect formation, immediately launching kinetic bombardment. Where Krillians used energy weapons, humans had learned the devastating simplicity of mass and velocity. Tungsten rods, accelerated to fractional light speed, turned the pastoral world into a hellscape. Farms burned, cities crumbled. The small defense fleet was overwhelmed in minutes by human fighters willing to ram enemy ships when ammunition ran low. Colony Administrator Hexaval sent desperate distress signals as human ground forces landed. The administrator expected soldiers. What emerged from the dropships were something else entirely. Sarah Chen led the first wave. 2 years of preparation had transformed the survivors into something the galaxy had never seen. Powered armor enhanced their strength. Neural implants allowed instant communication. But it was their eyes that terrified the Krillians, empty of mercy, full of purpose. "Take no prisoners," Sarah commanded. The order was unnecessary. Every human knew why they were here. The Krillians had never faced an enemy that didn't accept surrender. Their culture included elaborate rituals for submission, ways for the defeated to preserve some honor. Humans ignored every attempt at negotiation. In the capital city, Dr. Bhekar Patel's bioweapons were deployed through the water system. Modified Earth bacteria, harmless to humans but lethal to Krillian physiology, spread faster than any quarantine could contain. The aliens died drowning in their own fluids, their advanced medicine useless against pathogens from a world they'd tried to destroy. Within 48 hours, Kepler 442b was dead. The humans took everything useful, technology, ships, data cores, and left behind only ruins and corpses. Before departing, they transmitted a message on all Krillian frequencies. "Earth remembers, no mercy, no surrender. You face the true monsters now." High Command finally took notice. Grand Admiral Zixa Theta assembled the largest fleet in Krillian history, 50,000 warships drawn from across their empire. Surely no primitive species could stand against such might. They tracked the human fleet to the Vega system, where another Krillian colony had gone silent. Zixa Theta expected to find the humans looting the ruins. Instead, he found a trap. Humanity had learned from the Krillians' own tactics, but improved upon them. The entire system was seeded with automated weapons platforms, disguised as debris. Stealth mines drifted among the asteroids. Most crucially, human ships waited powered down, invisible to sensors. When the Krillian armada entered the system, space itself seemed to turn against them. Mines detonated in coordinated waves. Weapons platforms targeted command ships with surgical precision. Human vessels powered up inside the enemy formation, firing at point-blank range. But the true horror was the boarding actions. Human soldiers used short-range teleporters to appear inside Krillian ships. They moved through corridors like death incarnate, adapting to each species' fighting style within minutes. When ammunition ran low, they used blades. When blades broke, they used their armored hands. Captain Lisa Park of the assault cruiser, Remember Shanghai, epitomized human tactics. Her ship, damaged beyond repair, set a collision course with a Krillian dreadnought. The crew had already evacuated, but Park remained at the helm. Her last transmission became a human battle cry. "You killed 8 billion. We'll kill 8 trillion. This is just the beginning." The Battle of Vega lasted 6 days. When it ended, 30,000 Krillian ships were destroyed or captured. Human losses were significant but acceptable. They'd planned for worse. Grand Admiral Zixa Theta's flagship limped away with a handful of survivors. His report to the homeworld caused panic throughout the Empire. The humans weren't just winning, they were learning, adapting, becoming more dangerous with each engagement. On Earth, the bunkers had transformed into massive industrial complexes. The planet's surface remained largely poisoned, but underground, humanity built. Ships, weapons, soldiers, every resource was directed toward the war effort. Children born after the attacks were raised on stories of Earth's former beauty and Krillian cruelty. They trained from the moment they could walk. By age 10, they could field strip a plasma rifle blindfolded. By 15, they were combat ready. General Harrison, now Supreme Commander of Human Forces, reviewed production reports with satisfaction. "Current fleet strength? 18,000 combat vessels," his aide responded. "We're producing 100 new ships weekly." Not enough. Double production. Triple it if possible. We're fighting an empire of hundreds of worlds. The aide hesitated. Sir, that would require converting all remaining civilian manufacturing. Then do it. There are no civilians anymore. We're all soldiers now. The Krillian Empire tried to adapt. They recalled fleets from other conquests, developed new tactics, even attempted diplomatic contact. Human responses were consistent. Silence, followed by violence. Dr. Volkov's science teams had made another breakthrough. Studying captured Krillian technology, they'd discovered the quantum communication network linking the Empire. Every ship, every colony, every individual Krillian was connected through quantum entanglement. We can poison it, Volkov explained to the War Council. Introduce a virus, not biological, but informational. Corrupt their entire network from within. The project took months to perfect. Meanwhile, human fleets struck across the Empire. They targeted infrastructure first: shipyards, fuel depots, communication hubs. Each attack was precisely calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimal human losses. The Krillians learned to fear human unpredictability. Sometimes the humans would glass entire worlds from orbit. Other times they'd deploy ground forces for systematic extermination. There was no pattern except efficiency. On the colony world of Proxima 3, the Krillians tried using their own civilians as shields. Surely even these monsters wouldn't slaughter innocents. Colonel Rodriguez led the ground assault personally. When Krillian civilians were pushed forward, begging for mercy, his orders were clear. No exceptions. Later, in his private quarters, Rodriguez stared at his reflection. He'd become something he wouldn't have recognized 3 years ago. But then he remembered his daughter, vaporized in the first attack on Earth, and his resolve hardened. The monsters the Krillians had created felt no guilt, only purpose. Sarah Chen commanded special operations across the Empire. Her teams infiltrated Krillian worlds months before attacks, gathering intelligence and preparing. They poisoned food supplies, sabotaged defenses, and most effectively, spread fear. The Krillians had never known terror as a weapon. Their conquests were clinical, efficient. Humans made horror an art form. They left mutilated bodies in public spaces. They broadcast recordings of Krillian deaths on local networks. They ensured every alien knew they were coming, but not when or how. One Krillian philosopher wrote before his world fell, "We thought ourselves the galaxy's apex predators. We were wrong. We were merely killers. The humans are something worse. They are vengeance given form." Admiral Morrison perfected the fleet tactics that would define human warfare. Instead of massive battles, he preferred what he called death by 10,000 cuts. Small strike groups hit multiple targets simultaneously. By the time Krillian forces responded, the humans had vanished, only to appear 3 systems away. The Krillians' centralized command structure, once their strength, became a weakness. Humans operated in semi-autonomous cells, each capable of independent action. Destroying one group meant nothing. 10 more continued the mission. 3 years into the war, humanity launched the network virus. Dr. Patel's team had refined it into a work of devastating beauty. Disguised as routine data packets, it spread through Krillian quantum communications before activating simultaneously across the Empire. The virus didn't destroy, it corrupted. Navigation systems sent ships into stars, life support systems vented atmosphere, defense grids turned on the planets they protected. Most insidiously, it attacked the Krillians' neural implants, causing hallucinations and paranoia. Within days, the Empire descended into chaos. Fleets fired on each other. Colonies declared independence only to be destroyed by automated defenses. The careful order of 10,000 years collapsed in a cascade of failures. Humanity pressed the advantage ruthlessly. Fleets struck at defenseless worlds. Ground forces landed unopposed on planets where the population was already dying from their own malfunctioning technology. But the true psychological warfare was the broadcasts. On every frequency, in every Krillian language, the same message repeated, "You taught us to be monsters. Thank you for the lesson." The Krillian homeworld of Krill Prime had been untouched by war for millennia. Its citizens lived in crystal spires, surrounded by art and culture accumulated from 100 conquered civilizations. They watched the empire burn with growing horror. When long-range sensors detected the human fleet approaching, not thousands of ships, but hundreds of thousands, panic consumed the population. The home fleet, depleted by years of war, could only muster 10,000 defenders. Grand Admiral Zix Theta, scarred from Vega, took command of the defense. He knew it was hopeless, but fought anyway. The humans had learned every Krillian tactic, countered every strategy. Worse, they'd added their own innovations. The battle for Krill Prime began with kinetic bombardment from beyond sensor range. Relativistic kill vehicles, launched months earlier, arrived at significant fractions of light speed. The planet's shields held, but each impact drained irreplaceable power reserves. Human fighters swarmed in waves, accepting catastrophic losses to overwhelm point defenses. Behind them came the capital ships, each a monument to human ingenuity and hatred. They bore names that told the story. Remember Earth, 40 billion souls, no forgiveness, monster's pride. Sarah Chen led the ground invasion personally. Millions of human soldiers landed across the planet, each one a survivor or descendant of survivors. They fought through crystal cities with brutal efficiency, their power armor scarred from 100 battles. In the capital, she found the Krillian Council of Elders. These ancient beings had ordered the cleansing of hundreds of worlds, including Earth. They cowered now, offering surrender, reparations, anything to stop the slaughter. Sarah removed her helmet, wanting them to see her face clearly. "You left witnesses," she said, echoing her words to Commander Vexhar years ago. "You wanted the galaxy to fear you. Congratulations. The galaxy will remember the Krillians forever, as victims of the monsters you created." The elders begged for mercy. Sarah remembered her family, vaporized in Shanghai. She remembered the billions who'd died. She remembered the choice the Krillians had made to leave survivors as witnesses to their cruelty. "We learned from you," she said. "We'll leave witnesses too." But human witnesses were different. They left exactly one Krillian alive on each world, modified with human medical technology to live for centuries, unable to die, forced to walk among the ruins of their civilization and remember. The Krillian Empire fell in 7 years. What had taken them 10 millennia to build, humanity destroyed in less than a decade. But the war changed the victors as much as the vanquished. Dr. Volkov stood in the ruins of a Krillian laboratory studying their research. They'd been working on weapons that made human innovations look primitive. Temporal disruptors, reality anchors, planet crackers that could destroy entire solar systems. "We could rule the galaxy," his assistant said quietly. "With this technology, no one could stand against us." Volkov was quiet for a long moment. "Yes," he finally said. "We could become them, or we could be better." The debate raged across human leadership. They'd become monsters to defeat monsters. Could they return to being human? Should they? Admiral Morrison convened the War Council on Earth. The bunkers were being opened, the surface slowly being reclaimed. But the soldiers who emerged were not the humans who'd hidden underground 7 years ago. "We have a choice," Morrison said. "We can continue as we are, the galaxy's new terror, or we can try to remember what we were fighting for." The vote was closer than many expected. The generation raised on war struggled to imagine peace. But the older survivors, those who remembered Earth before the attacks, tipped the balance. Humanity would not become the new Krillians. They would be something different. protectors, not conquerors. The technology seized from the Empire would be used to prevent future genocides, not commit them. But the galaxy would never forget what humans were capable of when pushed too far. The monsters Earth had become would lurk beneath the surface, a warning to any who might threaten them again. Sarah Chen stood on Earth's surface for the first time in 7 years. The sky was still wrong, tinged orange from atmospheric damage. But grass was beginning to grow through the rubble. Life, as always, found a way. Rodriguez joined her, both of them looking older than their years. "Was it worth it?" he asked. "What we became?" Sarah thought of the 8 billion dead, of children who'd never see the sun, of the choice between extinction and monstrosity. "Ask me in 100 years," she said. The reconstruction began slowly. Cities were rebuilt but different from before. Monuments to the dead rose beside defensive installations. Every human learned combat alongside mathematics. Earth would heal, but it would never be naive again. Other species, freed from Krillian domination, approached humanity cautiously. They'd witnessed the war, seen what the primitives from Earth had accomplished. Some came seeking alliance. Others came to ensure humans wouldn't target them next. To all, humanity delivered the same message. We didn't choose to become monsters, but we proved we could be the worst monsters in the galaxy if necessary. Remember that. We will. The human empire, though they rejected that title, spanned the former Krillian territory within a decade. But instead of conquest, they built networks of mutual defense. Species that had cowered under Krillian rule now stood together, with humanity as the sword that would protect them. But late at night, veterans of the war would wake from nightmares, not of what had been done to them, but of what they'd done in return. They'd stared into the abyss and become it. The fact that they'd had no choice didn't make the memories easier to bear. General Harrison, retired and writing his memoirs, put it best. "We won the war by becoming what we hated. Our victory was teaching the galaxy a lesson. Create monsters at your own risk. They might be better at it than you are." 20 years had passed since the fall of the Krillian Empire. Earth's sky had healed enough to show blue during the day and stars at night. New cities rose from the ashes, their architecture a fusion of human resilience and alien technology. But in the shadows of gleaming spires, veterans of the war struggled with what they'd become. Sarah Chen, now director of the Galactic Defense Initiative, stood before the Council of Worlds. Representatives from 47 species filled the amphitheater, all freed from Krillian rule by human intervention. Many still looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "The Void Hunters have been confirmed," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of bad news. 3 frontier colonies have gone dark. No distress signals, no survivors, just empty worlds drained of all life. The chamber erupted in nervous chatter. The Void Hunters were legend, an ancient species that supposedly consumed entire civilizations, leaving only husks behind. Most had believed them myth, stories the Krillians told to justify their protective conquests. Ambassador Thex of the Altarian Republic spoke first. "What do you propose, Director Chen? Will humanity handle this as they handled the Krillians?" Sarah heard the unspoken question. Would the monsters come out to play again? "We're investigating all options," she replied carefully. After the meeting, she returned to her office in the orbital defense platform above Earth. Admiral Morrison, gray-haired but still sharp, waited with troubling reports. "It's worse than we told them," he said without preamble. "The colonies weren't just killed. Every atom of organic matter was extracted. The Void Hunters don't conquer, they harvest." Sarah studied the data. 3 worlds stripped bare in a matter of days. Technology beyond even what they'd seized from the Krillians. And they were moving toward populated systems. "Recommendations?" Morrison hesitated. The War Cabinet has reformed. They're suggesting we implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7. The nuclear option. Become the monsters again, but worse. Use the weapons they'd sworn to never deploy. The planet crackers, the temporal disruptors, the things that made even hardened veterans uncomfortable. Not yet, Sarah decided. We try diplomacy first. We're not the same people who burned the Krillian Empire. But were they? The infrastructure remained. The weapons waited in hidden vaults. Most importantly, the knowledge of how to wage total war lived in every human who'd survived those dark years. First contact with the Void Hunters came sooner than expected. Their scout ship appeared at the edge of the Kepler system, where humans had built a memorial to the 8 billion lost. It was massive, crystalline, and utterly alien in design. Captain Jennifer Park, daughter of the legendary Lisa Park, who'd rammed her dying ship into a Krillian dreadnought, commanded the diplomatic vessels sent to meet them. Her crew was entirely veterans, people who'd seen the worst of war and might recognize if it was coming again. The Void Hunters were nothing like any species humanity had encountered. They existed partially in normal space, partially in dimensions human science barely understood. When their representative manifested on Park's bridge, it was as a shifting shadow that hurt to perceive directly. "We are the hungering dark," it spoke without sound, words appearing directly in minds. "We have slept for eons. Now we wake, now we feed. Your resistance is irrelevant." Park didn't flinch. She'd faced Krillian shock troops in hand-to-hand combat at age 16. "Humanity offers you a choice. Find uninhabited worlds to harvest. Leave sentient species alone, or face the consequences." The entity's form rippled with what might have been amusement. "You are prey. Prey does not dictate terms." "We stopped being prey 20 years ago," Park replied. "Ask the Krillians." "Oh, wait, you can't." The Void Hunter studied her, and for a moment, Park felt it rifling through her memories. It saw the war, the burning worlds, the systematic extinction of an empire that had ruled for 10,000 years. Most disturbingly, it saw what humans had become to achieve victory. "Interesting," the entity said finally. "You are not prey. You are competitors. This changes nothing. We hunger. We will feed." The scout ship vanished, leaving Park's crew shaken but alive. The message was clear. The Void Hunters had evaluated humanity and found them worthy of notice, but not worthy of mercy. Sarah convened an emergency session of human leadership. The old War Council reformed like a machine clicking into gear. Veterans who'd spent 20 years trying to forget found themselves planning again. Dr. Volkov, ancient now but mind still sharp, presented his analysis. "Their technology operates on principles we don't fully understand. Dimensional phasing, energy absorption at the quantum level. Our conventional weapons won't work." "Then we use unconventional ones," suggested General Harrison's successor, Amanda Singh. She'd been a child soldier during the Krillian War, and her eyes held that particular emptiness common to that generation. "The reality anchors, the causal weapons, the things we swore never to use." The debate raged for hours. They'd promised themselves and the galaxy that the monsters would stay buried. But faced with extinction again, the old arguments surfaced. Survival at any cost. Victory by any means. Rodriguez, now Earth's elder statesman, spoke last. "We became monsters once to survive. We can do it again. The question is, can we come back from it twice?" The vote was unanimous. Humanity would fight, but they would try to do it differently this time. No genocide, no systematic extermination, just enough violence to make the Void Hunters reconsider. They were naive to think they could control it. The first battle came at Vega Station, a trading hub serving dozen species. The Void Hunter fleet arrived like a plague of shadows, their ships defying conventional physics. They began their harvest immediately, draining life from the station's 1,000,000 inhabitants. Admiral Morrison led the defense personally, commanding a fleet of humanity's most advanced warships. They opened with conventional weapons, plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, kinetic kill vehicles. All passed harmlessly through the Void Hunter ships. "Deploy special weapons," Morrison ordered reluctantly. The reality anchors fired, forcing the Void Hunters fully into normal space. For the first time, they were vulnerable. Human ships pressed the advantage, pouring fire into suddenly solid enemies. But the Void Hunters adapted quickly. Their ships split like living things, each fragment becoming a new threat. They phased in and out of reality, appearing inside human vessels. Where they touched, life ended. Not death, complete cessation, souls ripped away and devoured. Captain Park watched her crew die one by one, drained to husks in seconds. With her last breath, she activated her ship's self-destruct, taking 3 Void Hunter vessels with her. Like her mother, she died ramming the enemy. The battle was technically a human victory. The Void Hunters retreated. Vega Station survived, though with horrible casualties. But it had taken everything humanity had just to drive off a scouting force. Sarah read the casualty reports with growing dread. 30,000 dead. Their best crews, their newest ships. And intelligence suggested this was barely a fraction of Void Hunter strength. "We need to escalate," General Singh said bluntly. "Full mobilization, total war footing, become what we were." Sarah wanted to refuse. They'd worked so hard to step back from the abyss. But the numbers didn't lie. At current strength, humanity would lose within a year. "Do it," she ordered. The transformation was frighteningly quick. 20 years of peace evaporated like morning mist. Factories converted to weapons production. Children resumed combat training. Veterans put on armor they'd sworn never to wear again. But this time, humanity wasn't alone. The species they'd freed from Krillian rule stood with them. The Altarians provided advanced shields. The Zentari shared their psionic techniques. Even the peaceful core offered their agricultural worlds to feed the war effort. Most significantly, scattered Krillian survivors emerged from hiding. The witnesses humanity had left on each world, immortal and alone, came forward with hidden technology and bitter knowledge. Hexval, the last Krillian on Kepler 442b, met with Sarah personally. "You spared me to suffer," the alien said, mandibles clicking weakly. "For 20 years I've walked among the graves of my people. I've hated you every moment. And now I see worse monsters have come. I will help you fight them. Not for forgiveness, that's impossible. But because even Krillian revenge means nothing if we're all consumed." The alliance of former enemies transformed the war. Krillian strategic genius combined with human adaptability. Altarian technology merged with Zentari psionics. The galaxy united not from hope, but from desperate necessity. Dr. Volkov made the crucial breakthrough. Studying Void Hunter captives, at terrible cost, as proximity to them was lethal, he discovered their weakness. "They're not just from another dimension," he explained to the War Council. "They're from a universe where entropy won, where all energy has been consumed. They come here to feed because their reality is already dead. So how do we fight them?" "We don't fight them. We poison them. Make our reality toxic to their existence." The project required resources from across the Alliance. Entire star systems were evacuated to power the experiments. Volunteers died by the thousands testing prototypes. But gradually, humanity developed weapons that didn't just kill Void Hunters, they made existence painful for them. The quantum agony fields were deployed at the Battle of Proxima. When activated, they created zones where the laws of physics actively rejected Void Hunter presence. The entities that had consumed whole civilizations screamed in frequencies that shattered glass across light years. But victory came at a price. The fields required living operators to maintain, operators who died horribly as their life force powered the weapons. Volunteers lined up anyway. The generation raised on war understood sacrifice. Sarah stood on the bridge of humanity's flagship, watching young soldiers volunteer for certain death. They went willingly, even eagerly. She'd helped create a species that valued victory over individual survival. "We're doing it again," Rodriguez said beside her. He commanded ground forces now, leading troops a third his age. "Becoming monsters." "We never stopped being monsters," Sarah replied. "We just got better at hiding it." The war turned in their favor. Void hunter fleets retreated from systems protected by agony fields. Their harvests became costly, then impossible. For the first time in their eternal existence, they faced a species that could hurt them. But the true test came when humanity discovered the Void Hunter origin point, a massive rift between dimensions where their reality bled into ours. Closing it would end the threat forever. It would also require the greatest atrocity in human history. "The rift can only be sealed from inside their dimension," Dr. Volkov explained. "We would need to send a fleet through. They wouldn't be coming back. And to ensure the rift stays closed." He didn't need to finish. Everyone understood. They would need to detonate reality bombs inside the Void Hunter dimension, ensuring nothing could ever emerge again. It meant genocide on a scale that dwarfed the Krillian extinction. The War Council voted. Sarah abstained, unable to choose between survival and damnation. The motion passed by one vote. Admiral Morrison volunteered to lead the suicide fleet. "I'm old," he said simply. "I've done terrible things for good reasons. One more won't matter." 10,000 ships answered the call. Not just humans, Altarians, Zentari, even a few Krillian survivors. All understood they were flying to their deaths to save the galaxy. Sarah watched the fleet depart from Earth's orbital platform. Among them was the newest, Remember Shanghai, captained by her own daughter. The cycle continued, each generation inheriting the sins and strengths of the last. The fleet entered the rift and found hell waiting. The Void Hunter dimension was a graveyard of realities. Countless universes drained to husks. Trillions of Void Hunters swarmed toward the invaders, but humanity had learned to be monsters, and they'd taught their allies well. Reality bombs detonated in sequence, each one tearing holes in the dimensional fabric. Void Hunters died by the billions, their stolen energy dissipating into nothingness. Morrison's last transmission came as his ship prepared for the final detonation. "Tell them we chose to be monsters so they wouldn't have to. Tell them we're sorry. Tell them we're not sorry. Tell them we were human." The rift collapsed. The Void Hunter threat ended. The galaxy was saved. But the cost. Sarah stood before the Council of Worlds, delivering her final report. The assembled species listened in silence as she detailed the complete extinction of the Void Hunters. Genocide on a scale beyond comprehension. "Humanity accepts full responsibility," she concluded. "We became monsters again. We committed atrocities again. We saved you all, and we damned ourselves doing it." Ambassador Thex spoke for many. "You had no choice." "There's always a choice," Sarah replied. "We just consistently choose survival over soul. It's what makes us human, and what makes us monsters." She resigned that day, returning to Earth's surface. Others would lead now. Others would decide if humanity could find redemption or if they were forever marked by what necessity had made them. Rodriguez found her at the memorial to the 8 billion, now expanded to include the millions lost in both wars. "Any regrets?" he asked. Sarah considered the question. They'd survived 2 extinction attempts. They'd saved the galaxy twice. They'd also committed genocide twice, become willing monsters twice, sacrificed their humanity on the altar of necessity. "No," she said finally. "Regret implies we had better options. We did what we had to do. That's the real horror. Not that we became monsters, but that it was the right choice. They stood in silence, two old soldiers who'd seen too much and done worse. Around them, Earth healed. Children played in parks where battles had raged. New cities rose toward skies that grew clearer each year. But in the military academies, young humans still learned the lessons of total war. In hidden vaults, weapons of unimaginable destruction waited. The galaxy knew peace, but it was a peace enforced by the promise of horror should anyone threaten it. Earth's message to the universe remained unchanged. We are humanity. Push us and we become monsters. Threaten us and we become your extinction. We hate what we are capable of, but we will do it again if we must. The other species understood. They valued humanity as protectors while fearing them as potential destroyers. It was a balance that might last forever or collapse tomorrow. Sarah's daughter returned from a patrol mission, one of the few who'd survived the Rift assault by being ordered to remain behind. She hugged her mother, both of them carrying the weight of survival. "Do you think we'll ever be just human again?" the younger woman asked. "Not monsters, not soldiers, just people?" Sarah looked at the stars, where human fleets patrolled alongside former enemies, where peace was maintained by the threat of horror. "Maybe our children," she said, "or their children. Someday, when the galaxy forgets why it should fear us, but not us. We've seen too much, done too much. We are what we chose to become." Her daughter nodded, understanding. They were the generation of monsters, the ones who'd learned that survival sometimes required becoming the very thing you fought against. They would bear that burden so future generations might not have to. As night fell over Earth, Sarah walked home through streets filled with life. Humans and aliens mingled freely, the threat of extinction a fading memory for most. But in her dreams, she still heard Morrison's final words. "We were human." It was both an explanation and an apology, a warning and a promise. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they could become when pushed too far. The true monsters had introduced themselves, and the universe would never forget. But perhaps that was humanity's role, to be the monsters in the dark that kept worse monsters at bay, to be the thing other species feared so they could sleep peacefully, to carry the burden of necessary evil so others could remain good. Sarah Chen died years later, surrounded by grandchildren who knew her only as a stern but loving grandmother. They would learn later what she'd done, what all of them had done. Some would be horrified, others would understand. All would carry the knowledge that inside every human lurked the capacity for terrible necessity. Her gravestone bore a simple inscription. She was human. It was the highest honor and the darkest condemnation her species could offer. And in the depths of space, human fleets continued their eternal watch, protectors and monsters in equal measure, ensuring the galaxy's peace through the promise of horror. The true monsters had introduced themselves, and they would never let the universe forget what humanity was capable of when survival was at stake.